What if I told you that several U.S. states have active movements pushing for independence? Some are fueled by politics, others by economics, and a few by deep-rooted historical grievances. With rising tensions and growing divisions, experts are now questioning whether America's unity is as unshakable as we once thought. And here's the shocking part: some of the states on this list already have legal pathways, political support, and even economic plans for secession. Even Donald Trump himself would be stunned by how serious these movements have become. So, which states could actually leave the USA? And what would happen if they did? Stay tuned, because number 1 will leave you speechless. Let's dive in. Before we begin, if you're new here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. United we stand, divided we fall. Let's see how many of you believe in the power of unity. Now let's dive in. 10. California. California, the world's 5th largest economy, has long been at odds with the federal government on key issues like climate policies, immigration, and taxation. As one of the most progressive states in the U.S., it often finds itself clashing with conservative-led administrations, leading to talks of secession. The idea of Calexit gained traction after the 2016 presidential election, with some activists arguing that California's wealth and global influence could allow it to thrive as an independent nation. Given its massive tech industry, agricultural dominance, and Hollywood's global cultural impact, many believe California could sustain itself without federal support. However, skeptics argue that secession would be nearly impossible due to the legal and logistical hurdles involved, as well as the fact that California still relies on federal funding in areas like infrastructure and disaster relief. Another driving force behind the secessionist movement is California's taxation and spending patterns. As one of the highest taxed states, Californians often feel that they contribute more to the federal government than they receive in return. The perception that their money funds programs in other states, while California faces crises like homelessness and wildfires, fuels frustration. Some activists believe that by keeping its tax revenue within its borders, California could invest more effectively in housing, healthcare, and renewable energy. However, critics argue that cutting ties with the U.S. could create an economic crisis, as businesses may flee due to uncertainty, and trade agreements would need to be renegotiated. Would California truly prosper on its own, or would independence bring unforeseen challenges? Despite the passionate calls for secession, breaking away from the U.S. would not be easy. The U.S. Constitution does not provide a clear legal pathway for states to leave the Union, meaning any attempt at independence would likely face intense political and legal battles. Additionally, California's diverse population includes many who are deeply patriotic and oppose the idea of separation. The question remains: will California's calls for independence grow louder in the coming years, or will it remain a powerful but divided member of the United States? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. 9. Texas. If there's one state that has always carried an independent spirit, it's Texas. The Lone Star State was once its own republic, having declared independence from Mexico in 1836 and remaining sovereign for nearly a decade before joining the United States in 1845. This history fuels the belief that Texas could once again stand on its own, and the idea of Texit has gained traction in recent years. Advocates argue that Texas has everything it needs to be an independent country: rich oil reserves, a booming tech industry, vast agricultural resources, and a powerful economy that rivals many nations. In fact, Texas has the second largest GDP of any U.S. state, surpassed only by California. With its strong economic foundation, some believe Texas could function as a separate nation without relying on federal support. But is this dream realistic, or is it just a fantasy fueled by state pride? One of the biggest reasons Texans consider secession is their deep-rooted distrust of federal overreach. Texas has frequently clashed with Washington, D.C. over issues like gun rights, border security, and taxation. Many Texans feel that the federal government imposes too many regulations that do not align with the state's values. The Texas Nationalist Movement, a political group advocating for independence, argues that Texas should control its own borders, natural resources, and economy without interference. Supporters claim that the state's self-sufficiency in energy, agriculture, and technology would allow it to thrive independently. However, critics warn that Texas also benefits significantly from federal funding, especially in disaster relief. The state is prone to hurricanes, wildfires, and power grid failures. Without federal assistance, could Texas handle these crises on its own? Even if Texas managed to overcome the legal challenges, its economy could face significant hurdles. While it is an economic powerhouse, much of its trade is tied to the rest of the United States. Becoming an independent nation would require renegotiating trade deals, establishing its own military, and creating a new currency. Additionally, Texas's major cities, Houston, Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio, are hubs for industries that depend on national and international cooperation. If Texas were to break away, would these cities remain as influential, or would businesses relocate to more stable regions? While Texit remains a passionate topic of discussion, the reality of secession is far more complicated than it seems. Could Texas ever truly go it alone, or is it destined to remain a key part of the United States? Let us know what you think in the comments below. 8. Florida. Florida is often considered a world of its own, with its unique culture, economy, and political landscape, setting it apart from the rest of the United States. With a booming economy fueled by tourism, real estate, and international trade, many argue that Florida has the financial strength to operate independently. Its geographical location makes it a crucial gateway between the U.S., Latin America, and Europe, allowing it to thrive on global commerce. Additionally, Florida's lack of a state income tax and business-friendly policies attract corporations and wealthy individuals, making it one of the most economically attractive states in the country. Given its financial independence and cultural diversity, some wonder if Florida could eventually decide to break away from the Union and become its own sovereign nation. One of the biggest factors fueling speculation about Florida's secession is its political divide. The state has often swung between Republican and Democratic control, creating a unique blend of conservative and liberal ideologies. Some Floridians feel disconnected from Washington, D.C., and believe the state could be better managed without federal interference. Immigration policies, environmental regulations, and disaster relief efforts have been major points of contention between Florida and the federal government. Additionally, the state's handling of crises, such as hurricanes and pandemics, has sometimes put it at odds with national policies. Supporters of Florida's independence argue that the state already operates semi-independently in many ways, and separating from the U.S. could allow it to implement policies tailored specifically to its needs. Another major consideration is Florida's diverse population. The state is home to a mix of cultures, with large communities of retirees, immigrants, and transplants from other states. Many residents have deep ties to the rest of the country and may not support the idea of secession. Additionally, military bases across Florida play a crucial role in national defense, making it unlikely that the federal government would allow the state to leave without significant resistance. While Florida's independence remains a fascinating concept, the reality of breaking away from the U.S. would be far more complex than it seems. Could the Sunshine State ever truly go solo, or is it forever bound to the Union? Let us know what you think in the comments. 7. Alaska. Alaska's history as a U.S. state is relatively short, having only been purchased from Russia in 1867 and officially granted statehood in 1959. But despite being part of the U.S., Alaska has always maintained a distinct identity, both culturally and geographically. Separated from the mainland and bordering Canada, it often feels more like its own country than a U.S. state. The idea of Alaskan independence isn't new. Groups like the Alaska Independence Party have long pushed for a referendum on secession, arguing that the state's vast natural resources and strategic location make it capable of standing on its own. But could Alaska really survive without the U.S.? One of the strongest arguments for Alaskan independence is its rich supply of natural resources. The state is home to massive reserves of oil, natural gas, timber, and minerals, which generate significant revenue. Alaska also benefits from a permanent fund dividend, which distributes oil profits directly to residents. Some independence advocates argue that by cutting ties with the federal government, Alaska could keep more of its wealth and invest in its own infrastructure, rather than sending tax dollars to Washington, D.C. However, while the state has economic potential, the oil industry is volatile, and relying solely on natural resources could create instability. Would an independent Alaska be able to build a diversified economy, or would it struggle without federal support? Finally, there's the issue of public support. While independence movements exist, the majority of Alaskans still identify strongly as Americans. The idea of breaking away from the U.S. might appeal to a small group of advocates, but it would likely face overwhelming opposition in any statewide vote. Additionally, Alaska receives more federal aid per capita than any other state, meaning that many residents might not be willing to give up those benefits. While the idea of an independent Alaska is intriguing, the reality is far more complicated. Would Alaskans be willing to take the risk, or is the dream of secession nothing more than an idea that will never come to pass? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. 6. Hawaii. Hawaii is unique among U.S. states because it was once a fully independent kingdom before being annexed by the United States in 1898. To this day, there is a strong sovereignty movement within the islands, with many native Hawaiians and local activists arguing that the U.S. illegally overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy and that Hawaii should be restored as an independent nation. The Hawaiian independence movement has gained traction in recent decades, with organizations like the Hawaiian Kingdom Government and the Nation of Hawaii advocating for self-determination. Given its distinct history, geographical isolation, and cultural identity, some argue that Hawaii is more than capable of thriving as an independent country. But would a modern-day independent Hawaii be sustainable, or would breaking away from the U.S. bring unexpected challenges? One of the biggest arguments for Hawaiian independence is its ability to sustain itself economically. Tourism is the state's largest industry, with millions of visitors pouring in each year, generating billions of dollars in revenue. Additionally, Hawaii has valuable agricultural exports like coffee, pineapples, and macadamia nuts, which could help support an independent economy. However, Hawaii also relies heavily on imports for essential goods, including food, fuel, and medical supplies. Without U.S. federal support, the cost of living, which is already among the highest in the nation, could skyrocket. Some independence advocates suggest that Hawaii could negotiate trade agreements with the U.S. and other Pacific nations, but there are no guarantees that these deals would be as favorable as the current system. Would an independent Hawaii be able to maintain its economic stability, or would it struggle to meet the needs of its residents? Another major hurdle is the legal and political process of secession. While many Native Hawaiians and activists support independence, a significant portion of the state's population, including those with military or economic ties to the U.S., may not. The U.S. government is unlikely to recognize a Hawaiian independence movement, and any attempt to secede would face fierce opposition. Additionally, Hawaii receives significant federal funding for infrastructure, disaster relief, and social programs, money that would be lost if the state were to become independent. While the idea of restoring Hawaiian sovereignty remains a passionate topic, the reality of breaking away from the U.S. is incredibly complex. Would Hawaii thrive as its own nation, or is it forever tied to the Union? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. 5. South Carolina. South Carolina holds a unique place in American history, as it was the very first state to secede from the Union in 1860, sparking the Civil War. While the state was ultimately brought back into the U.S., secessionist sentiments have never fully disappeared. Some argue that South Carolina's strong conservative identity, historical roots in states' rights, and economic resilience could make it a viable candidate for independence. In recent years, political tensions between the federal government and conservative southern states have reignited discussions about sovereignty. But could South Carolina truly survive on its own, or would independence bring more problems than benefits? One major argument for South Carolina's independence is its economic stability. The state has a growing manufacturing industry, with companies like BMW, Boeing, and Michelin contributing to its economy. Additionally, agriculture and tourism play significant roles in the state's financial success, making it relatively self-sufficient. Some independence advocates believe that by cutting ties with the federal government, South Carolina could implement its own economic policies, lower taxes, and reduce federal regulations. However, skeptics point out that the state receives substantial federal funding for infrastructure, healthcare, and education. Without this support, South Carolina would need to find alternative ways to fund essential services. Would an independent South Carolina be able to maintain its economy, or would financial instability become a major issue? Beyond economics and politics, public opinion remains a major barrier to secession. While some South Carolinians support the idea of sovereignty, many are proud Americans who do not wish to see their state leave the Union. Additionally, secession could lead to divisions within the state itself, as not all residents would agree on the best path forward. While the idea of an independent South Carolina may appeal to certain groups, the reality is far more complex. Could the state truly sustain itself outside of the U.S., or would the challenges outweigh the benefits? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Sir 4. New York. New York is often considered the cultural and economic heart of the United States. As home to Wall Street, the world's largest stock exchange, and a hub for global finance, it's easy to see why some might think that New York could stand alone as its own independent nation. The state has an economy that rivals some countries, thanks to its dominance in finance, real estate, technology, and entertainment. Its global influence in areas like banking, media, and the arts creates an identity that feels disconnected from the rest of the U.S. With its diverse population, highly educated workforce, and position as a major player on the world stage, New York has the potential to function independently, or so some secessionists argue. But could New York truly thrive without the backing of the U.S.? One of the strongest arguments for New York's independence is its economic prowess. As the financial capital of the world, New York is home to thousands of multinational corporations and a financial system that drives global markets. The state's economy is worth nearly $2 trillion, making it one of the largest subnational economies on the planet. The city of New York alone contributes a significant portion of the state's GDP, driven by industries such as banking, technology, media, and real estate. If New York were to break away from the U.S., it would still have the resources to maintain its economic influence and could possibly negotiate favorable trade agreements. However, much of New York's financial system is deeply integrated with the rest of the country, and it could face challenges in untangling these economic relationships. Would an independent New York be able to continue its economic dominance, or would it encounter obstacles that could weaken its global standing? Another significant barrier to New York's independence is the political and cultural divide within the state itself. While New York City is a liberal stronghold, much of the state leans more conservative, especially in rural areas. Secession could cause internal divisions and disagreements about the state's direction. New York also has deep political ties with the rest of the United States, and many residents still consider themselves part of the Union. While the idea of New York becoming its own nation has its advocates, it would likely face substantial resistance from both the federal government and a large portion of its population. Would an independent New York truly unify the state, or would it create more fractures and challenges in the long run? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. 3. Oregon. Oregon is often seen as one of the most progressive and environmentally conscious states in the U.S., with a strong reputation for liberal policies, sustainability, and natural beauty. However, some residents feel that Oregon's progressive agenda and policies do not align with the rest of the country, particularly with the more conservative states in the Union. Given its relatively low population and self-sufficient economy, some secessionists argue that Oregon could operate independently and focus on policies that reflect its values and priorities. From its booming tech industry to its strong agricultural base, Oregon has the resources to support itself, but could it truly survive as a standalone entity? Oregon's economy is diverse, with key industries including technology, agriculture, and tourism. The state has become a tech hub, particularly in Portland, where companies in the software, semiconductor, and biotechnology sectors have seen significant growth. Oregon is also a major player in the agricultural sector, with crops like wheat, blueberries, and hazelnuts making up a large portion of its exports. Additionally, the state's natural beauty, including its national parks and coastline, attracts millions of tourists every year. If Oregon were to become independent, it could continue to draw from these sectors, establishing trade agreements with the U.S. and other nations. However, Oregon would also need to navigate issues like transportation and energy infrastructure, which currently rely on federal systems. Would an independent Oregon be able to maintain its economic strength, or would it struggle to replace the support currently provided by the U.S.? Politically, Oregon's desire for independence faces a number of obstacles. While the state is known for its progressive politics, the broader U.S. political landscape could make secession a difficult proposition. Oregon's population is deeply intertwined with the rest of the country, especially through trade, education, and national infrastructure. Secession would require extensive negotiations and potentially lead to political isolation for the state. Furthermore, many Oregonians still strongly identify as Americans and may not support the idea of independence. Would Oregon's progressive ideals be enough to overcome the logistical and political challenges of secession, or would they result in unintended consequences? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. 2. Colorado. Colorado is often seen as a state with a unique identity, one that blends outdoor adventure with progressive politics. The state's history of embracing a variety of social and political movements, from environmental activism to marijuana legalization, has led to a growing sense of independence. With its stunning mountain ranges, booming tech industry, and a diverse population, Colorado stands apart in many ways. Some secessionists argue that the state could thrive on its own, using its resources to build a self-sustaining economy. But could Colorado really function as an independent nation, or would it face unforeseen challenges? Culturally, Colorado's progressive politics make it an outlier in the American West, a region traditionally dominated by more conservative states. Its population is diverse and highly educated, with a growing number of younger residents drawn to its urban areas. However, this progressive stance often places Colorado at odds with the political direction of the U.S. government, particularly under conservative administrations. While many Coloradans support the idea of autonomy, the state is deeply integrated into the U.S. political system, making secession difficult. Furthermore, it's uncertain how an independent Colorado would manage its foreign policy, trade agreements, and defense strategies. Could Colorado truly maintain its identity as an independent state, or would it face insurmountable challenges trying to navigate its future outside of the Union? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. 1. Montana. Montana, with its vast landscapes and sparse population, is a state that evokes a strong sense of independence and frontier spirit. The state's residents pride themselves on their self-reliance, and many feel that Montana's needs are often ignored by the federal government. From its wide-open plains to its mountainous terrain, Montana is both physically and culturally distinct from many other states. While Montana is primarily known for its agricultural output and natural beauty, some residents argue that it could thrive as an independent nation. Could Montana truly sustain itself outside of the U.S., or would its isolation become a major obstacle? One of the main arguments for Montana's independence is its natural resources. The state is rich in coal, oil, natural gas, and timber, making it a significant player in the energy and resource extraction industries. Montana also has vast agricultural lands that produce wheat, barley, and cattle, contributing significantly to the U.S. economy. If the state were to become independent, it could continue to leverage these industries to support its economy. However, Montana's economy is heavily reliant on federal subsidies and contracts, especially for rural development, energy infrastructure, and education. Without these federal funds, Montana would need to develop its own systems for economic growth and public services. Could the state find alternative sources of income and manage its industries independently, or would it struggle to meet the needs of its population? While Montana's residents may feel a strong desire for greater self-determination, the logistics of secession would be incredibly difficult. The state's population is small, and much of its economy is tied to the national supply chain. For example, the state's natural resources, including energy and agriculture, depend on broader trade agreements and federal regulations. Additionally, Montana's role in national defense and its position within the U.S. military system would complicate any effort to break away. The state has military bases and training facilities that play a critical role in national security. An independent Montana would need to establish its own defense system, which could be a costly and complex process. Would Montana's desire for independence outweigh the practical realities of governing a state on its own? Let us know your thoughts below. Thank you for watching. We've explored some of the most fascinating possibilities of secession and whether or not these states could truly thrive on their own. It's a thought-provoking idea, but as we've seen, there are many challenges to consider. What do you think? Could these states actually leave the USA and succeed as independent nations, or is it all just wishful thinking? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our latest videos. And remember, if you have any more questions or want to see more content like this, just comment below. We love hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay curious and keep exploring.